We were talking about the championship game this week, and you were talking about the 13th data point.
Yeah.
Is it more important to have the 13th data point or a game on the 13th week?
No, I think it's the 13th data point. You know, it would have been interesting to see what would happen if you know, we had a one-loss another game instead of an undefeated game. And you know, we heard the message in 14 that despite having two good teams that had played good games on the last day of the season, that we needed to do more. And so we did a deep dive on data analysis, and it came back telling us that we'd have a better chance of getting in the playoff if we played a championship game. So we went about the process of trying to put that in place. And you know, you can never forecast exactly how these things are going to turn out, but it feels like a pretty good decision today.
And if OU was playing West Virginia today, that wouldn't be the same.
Well, you know, anytime you have a championship game between your first and second teams, it's going to be a good game. But this one's a special rivalry. It's one of the most special rivalries in all of sports. And so to have a chance to do it twice in 1 year, one of my staff was telling me a story about the last time they played twice in 1 year in 1903, that they had to stop the game for a period of time because the ball had rolled under some horses. You know, it's a little different than playing in the grandest venue in all of sports.
Bob, do you think, from either what you've been told or what the league's been told, if Texas loses this game, they'll still be in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl?
Well, it's a fairly clear outcome, actually. If OU wins and moves up,
right.
Texas will be in the Sugar Bowl.
Okay.
If OU wins and does not move up, they will be in the Sugar Bowl, and Texas will be selected by somebody else, likely the Alamo. And then, of course, if Texas wins, they'll be in the Sugar Bowl, and OU will likely remain high enough ranked that they could be selected in a New Year's Six game.
Okay, just making sure.
The whole orange down thing, why is it easier to just say, yes, it's a penalty, no, it's not?
Because the rule is not written that way. The sportsmanship and sports-like conduct rules are very specific. If you're drawing attention to yourself, if you're taunting an opponent, if you're doing something that is intentionally derogatory, it's callable as an unsports-like conduct. You know, we don't want to turn this game into a circus. These kids have worked too hard and for too long to have that be the situation. We have a veteran referee and a veteran crew working this game, and so I wish it was just that clear, but it's not. And the rule is 9.2 in the rule book, and it's a page and a half of a lot of stuff that could be flagged for unsports-like conduct. And so, you know, this all occurred innocently enough with Coach Riley asking a question about a hypothetical, and our supervisor trying to answer it as honestly as he could. But just like his answer, there isn't an exact answer to it.
Could there be one by next year, you think? You think
No,
the other coaches would like that?
I think the rule is going to be the rule. I think it's left to the discretion of the officiating crew on the field. It's situational, and if they think it meets the criteria of 9.2, they're going to flag it. If they don't, they won't.
So if you had the chance to do it,
I mean, were you surprised that it became such a hot topic?
Well, I have gotten myself to the point where I'm not surprised any longer by virtually anything that goes on in athletics. But yeah, well, it's, you know, this is a rivalry game, and those kinds of things occur in rivalry games. They take circuitous paths, and this one took on a life of its own, and you know, it was a response to a hypothetical question.
So if you had a redo, you wouldn't change anything. You'd do the same thing.
Well, I wasn't directly involved in it at the outset. This was during a teleconference on Monday that we hold with the two teams that are in the championship. And so the head coaches are on the call, our supervisor officials is on the call. I wasn't on the call. And so, you know, our supervisor made every attempt to answer the question as honestly as possible. And because it became a public matter, it kind of took on a life of its own. But respond to a question.
And that was just supposed to be like a logistical thing with Ed and Greg and Lincoln and Tom, I guess, right? Just going over details.
There are a lot. There's team hotels. There's travel and arrival times. There's
going over everything.
Are you wearing home uniforms or road uniforms? It's the kind of thing you go through before any kind of a contest like this. So yeah, it was mostly dotting I's and crossing T's because there's a manual that lays out all this stuff, but you want to make sure everybody gets what they need.
Not to be too detailed about that, but what is the scenario where it's not flagged?
Well, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. I'm not an official, and I can't say it any better than the fact that it's circumstantial, and it's going to depend on the act at the time and the nature of it. That's left to the sole discretion of the official.
Which crew is it?
Well, it's Reggie Smith is the referee. He's been one of our best referees for a long time, and then it is the highest rated guys at their position from the rest of our crews.
And
They're all guys that have worked for 12 crews the entire year.
has Reggie done the Texas OU game? Do you know?
Don't know that off the top of my head, Coach.
Are you comfortable that if Oklahoma wins this game, they will get in?
No. No, I think, Kevin, the human nature being what it is, I think the last thing you see makes a lot of difference, and I don't think it's inconceivable that Ohio State could win big, and they could jump. I don't think that's as likely as it might have been before Tuesday because they talk about the strength of schedule, and OU's strength of schedule is going to do nothing but get stronger by this, and chances are if Ohio State beats Northwestern, chances are Northwestern may fall out of the top 25, so that would further weaken the strength of schedule. It's got to be an interesting chemistry in the room because you've got Rob Mullins with a team in a dog in the fight, and you've got Gene Smith and Joe Castiglione looking across the table at each other and wondering what the other one's thinking and what the rest of the people in the room are thinking. So I'm guessing it's an interesting chemistry.
With that being said, do you think it's time to look at expanding or do you still like the 4-team playoff setup? Or
well, there were a lot of compromises that went into getting to the 4-team playoff. It's clearly better than what we had before. It's received approval ratings that are in the 80s. So I think you have to be slow to move away from something that's been that successful. Will it ever happen? I don't know. I would never say never, but we haven't had any legitimate conversations about it to this point.
Do you feel comfortable that y'all done everything you could to get a Big 12 team in?
Yeah, we meet weekly by teleconference with the two people that work with us. Todd Stansberry and Bobby Johnson are the two committee members that work with the Big 12 every week, and we provide them more information than there is in our releases, and then we get on a call with them and we talk through it. And so, I think the best thing that our champion has going for it, if it turns out to be OU, is when I was chair of the basketball committee as an old wrestler, there were times when you couldn't tell the difference between two teams. They just looked exactly the same. Couldn't slide a piece of paper. And what I would usually do is look at one of the coaches in the room and say, who would you least like to play? I think Oklahoma is the team that the people that are going to be in the playoff are going to least want to play, just because of the way they play and the volatility of their offense. They're just a very, very talented offensive football team. And that doesn't mean they're going to win today. Texas is better than they were when they played before, and I think Oklahoma's better than they were when they played in October. So I expect this to be a very good football game. But back to your original question, I don't have any certainty, and I won't until tomorrow afternoon.
Bob, with all due respect to all the other 8 members of the Big 12, is having Oklahoma and Texas both being good at the same time good for the conference?
Yeah, without question. I mean, we're a better conference when Texas is good, but I think lost in that comment is the fact that we had 4 other teams competing for bowl eligibility on the last day of the season. we had a lot of good football played last weekend, and so you know, two years ago, Baylor and Kansas had one win between them. This year, we didn't have anybody that had fewer than 3 wins. I think the balance in the conference is as much the story as the top of the conference. But sure, the Big 12 is stronger when Texas and Oklahoma are both playing at high levels.
No, you can only answer based on pregame.
Sorry to have my back to you.
You're fine, Bob. But you were down there walking around. What's your initial reaction of this game in this venue?
I wish I could play. You know, it's got an unbelievable energy down there.
Same as the energy at the other places across town?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, no, I think, but having this for all the marbles is a different, you know, it's a different vibe. That game is a rivalry game that stands on its own, and I love playing it at the Cotton Bowl because I love having it in the Fair Park and all the things that go along with it that are so historic. But this is arguably, and in my estimation, the best sports venue in the world, and to have our championship game between two great teams, two great young coaches, a full house. I just think it's everything you want a championship game to be.
Traditionalists have always worried about having this game here, and I know this isn't your jurisdiction so much as Oklahoma's and Texas.
Yeah,
but
the conference really doesn't have a dog in the fight. But if they ask me, I'd tell them I think playing it at Fair Park is a good deal, just because I tend to be a traditionalist, and I love the 50-yard line around a 50-yard line. You know, that's one of the things that's really different today. Is we've had tickets on sale since July, and so you're going to have OU people sitting right next to Texas people, which is very different than Fair Park.
Bob, looking ahead to the off season, do you guys have to review the targeting rule and how it's implemented, or are you pretty pleased with how it's handled this season?
The targeting numbers are about what they were. We get a report on it every week, and the targeting numbers in terms of numbers called and not called and overruled are about exactly the same as they were last year. It's an inexact science. That's what we pay our officials to do. But ultimately, I think targeting too often gets described in the context of competitive advantage or disadvantage. It's there for player safety, and it's as simple as that. And that's why it's officiated the way it is, and that's why when I was chair of football oversight, I felt very strongly that we have to make it a safer game, and I think we need to continue that process, and the targeting is just one portion of it. I think as an example, the kickoff rule, while some will say, well, it's taken a component of the game out that we really love, what we tried to do was come up with a rule. The Rules Committee tried to come up with a rule that would make it safer. The kickoff is about 5 times more likely to create an injury, and it's not all head. It's shoulders and knees and backs, and it's just a lot more dangerous play. And we tried to make it more like the punt, where you can fair catch it. And what you're starting to see is when people have a chance to advance the ball at the 4 or 5 yard line, they're fair catching it most of the time because it's not worth the wear and tear. Almost none of those are run out past the 25.
Are we going to see it go away, you think?
If we can't turn the data around to where it's safer, I believe it will go away. Now, of course, the challenge in that is having it go away and also being able to retain the onside kick. Because obviously it's a tremendous strategic need.
Right.
But I could fully see a day when it could go away.
And when it's a strategic need, both sides usually know it.
Yeah, no, that's right.
It takes it away the first
half. It's not like you're
so.
sneaking up on it.
Yeah.
Well, one of your fellow commissioners yesterday, after a certain 7 overtime game in College Station, talked about maybe taking a look at the overtime rules. That maybe having teams play that much extra football is not necessarily a good thing, as entertaining as it is. Any thoughts on that, one way or the other?
Well, I haven't given it much thought, Chuck. But it does strike me that you get teams that are tired to the point of increasing the likelihood of injury when you play that long. That's a long time. I'm not sure what you do. The 2-point conversion was intended to make it a little more likely that it would terminate the game, and it didn't work that way. There's been talk about moving it out to the 35-yard line from the 25, and that may be a good idea. I think it probably gives an additional advantage to the defense, so the coin toss becomes more of a consideration. But yeah, I mean, you don't see a pattern of 7 overtimes. You don't see a pattern of 5 or even 3. It usually does a pretty good job of deciding it. And frankly, I like it a lot better than the NFL overtime.
Why don't they do the 2-point after the first overtime? What's magical about the third?
I don't know.
That might in some of
I think it surely could be something that could be considered.
Bob, looking back on 2014 real fast, do you think having an OU like a blue blood program helps your case, whereas 2014 TCU Baylor or maybe didn't have the name recognition? You know, like in terms of the committee, is that a fair assessment as to why they might have jumped?
I don't know. I haven't been in the room. I didn't hear a whole lot about the discussion, but you know, the interesting thing about it was TCU played Iowa State into a lopsided game, but the other game was the highest ranked game that was on Championship Saturday. As I recall it was number 6 Baylor against number 9 Kansas State. It was a great matchup, and I got asked about it earlier. Why didn't I just declare a champion? You know, why didn't you use the head-to-head and declare a champion? Well, the answer is our athletic directors and our football coaches had unanimously adopted co-champions. So, you know, I did what they told me to do. And the CFP even asked, "Are you going to declare a champion through a tiebreaker?" And that wasn't what we chose to do. And so, since that time, we've changed it.
Does this make about $10 million for the league this game?
Well, there's no way to know. We have a guarantee against the gate, and then we break into revenue sharing, and we'll break into revenue sharing. But I don't have any idea what those numbers are. It's going to be a good year for us from a financial standpoint, and a good year for the Cowboys.
How many seats